Well, welcome back to the Pastor's Podcast. Pastor Scott here with Steph Moss again.
Hi, guys.
And joining us from the Middle East are Jonathan and Casey. Thank you guys so much for this time and for... are you guys staying up late, or is this still a reasonable hour for you?
Kids are in bed.
Okay.
For right now.
That's a win.
Time.
Would you okay, here's my question though. Would you normally be in bed at this time?
Not quite, but we'd be inching our way.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for staying up a little bit, giving us, making it possible for us to connect this way. I really appreciate it. And so, we're excited. First of all, it's just good to see you guys. Everybody else doesn't get to see you, but Steph and I get to see you.
It's the perks of the job.
That's right. And maybe, so one of the things that we keep talking about is how, with the turnover and so many new people here at Cornerstone, we're oftentimes, even our longest term partners, constantly introducing our partners to people that are new to the church, who are just getting connected, who maybe haven't heard about them before. So could you just give us, maybe to start out, a brief overview of what you're doing and what brought you there, for those that maybe haven't heard anything to get us started?
Wow. We are so grateful to be with you and to be seen by you and to be able to see Scott's beard, because the last
That's right.
It's not as glorious as it currently is now.
I feel like it looks extra good on Zoom on Zoom video. Like it's just not, it's it's a little grainy. It's not good quality enough, so the shape just looks perfect.
It does have its own personality.
TV beard. So I'm Jonathan,
And I'm Casey.
and we got married at Cornerstone in 2012. Is that right?
Yeah.
And we're super blessed by our time there. We spent some time overseas, sometimes in the States, through medical training. And then God sent us out to the Middle East about 18 months ago, a little shy of 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, our time in the university at UCLA, really shaping our hearts for the nations, and our time in the local church, really giving us a heart to be sent out by the local church, to be able to go into different parts of the world that don't have access to the gospel. And so, in many places in America, you can find churches on every corner. And there's incredible access in our city of almost 1 million. There's one building in which believers can legally gather. And so we really were blessed by an opportunity to move here. I get to work in the medical field as a physician while we're learning language and developing relationships in the community. So that's a brief overview.
Yeah.
Of what we're doing.
That's perfect.
Casey, did you want to add anything about your family? Is there more than you guys? Or
Sure. Yeah. There are.
I keep forgetting.
just thought to give a broader picture to those that don't know you, maybe.
Yeah, so we have 4 kids, spanning 9 down to 3, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I'm homeschooling them in the mornings, and then in the afternoons I study Arabic, some of the afternoons. And our 2 boys are the older 2, and they're also learning Arabic. So I take them with me, and they have their own class, and studying Arabic with us.
Nice.
So I know that for the last 18 months that you've been there, that language acquisition, that language learning has been, in a lot of ways, the primary job description, even ministry wise, for both of you. How's that going? How's that process been? I know that's a huge hill to climb. How are you guys doing with that, and what's that look like?
Yeah, it's going well. We have been studying pretty intensively for the last, it's a bit more like a little over a year. We started February of last year.
Okay.
And the program we're doing it's called GPA, Growing Participator Approach. So we are basically treated like children. And we sit one-on-one with a teacher, and there's no English involved. They just speak to us in Arabic, and we're just slowly soaking up the language like as an infant and toddler would. So early on, that was hard. We couldn't speak, and we just had to listen, and they pointed up pictures over and over and told us the names of things. But now, after a year, we can speak pretty well. And yeah, we're really thankful.
Can you pause 1 second? I'm sorry, I have to keep going.
Read it.
Yeah,
I was trying to hold it as long as I could.
We'll be able to include all of that, but Steph knows we can edit, so she's like,
I know. I'm like, hold on. Sorry.
No, that's great.
Okay.
I always get in that position. I get a tickle, and I just feel like it's still not socially acceptable to be coughing a lot, at least here. Like, they still think about COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm always like trying to choke it back.
Yeah, I was like holding it down, and then it just kept growing, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to interrupt her with a cough. Okay, sorry. Okay, we pause, and then we can keep going.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
So yeah, we have really loved and were surprised by what was available. So a new language center opened up just after we moved here. So we had to wait a little bit to get started, but it was such a gift. The way that they do language is very relational, very much conversation focused, really trying to get people to be able to understand quickly and be able to speak quickly without having all the rules or without having everything perfectly down. So a lot of our time in language currently is having conversations, talking about our lives, asking questions about our teachers' lives. And in this culture that is very privacy heavy and privacy focused, it is a huge open door into people's lives. And being able to do that on a daily basis has been one of the biggest gifts of our time here, and greatest opportunities to be able to share openly about our faith, openly about our lives, openly about how we deal with struggles, and even walking with some of our teachers through some of their life struggles and being able to share different things with them, being able to share stories with them from the Bible, being able to share the gospel with them in different ways. And so we've been surprised by the opportunities through language. Language really is a ministry. Language learning really, we're told that coming in, language learning is ministry. And I think we didn't really understand what that could look like until we were here. So we've been pleasantly surprised by the process.
Yeah. How are you feeling about it now? I would imagine, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I would imagine that about a year in like this, that it, you've probably made incredible strides, and there's probably also more you just want more quickly. Like, how are you guys feeling about that process even now?
Yeah, I think we're in different places. I think partway through the year, I just really felt exhausted from the schedule of trying to keep up with homeschooling, and then, quickly transitioning and going and studying Arabic all afternoon, and then coming home and trying to get dinner on the table. So I decided to slow down a bit and continue, but do less. And so I think that has been good, but I need to continue to press on. And I think especially just a big prayer request that we're constantly asking for is endurance. And even though I'm running at a slower pace, I want to endure and running. So that's a big prayer request always, is endurance in language learning.
I'm so thankful for that, Casey. I think I see that, and that's a huge way we can come alongside you guys to pray and to support. And first of all, I'm thankful that you were able to recognize and take that step. I think there's sometimes ways in which the pace that we wish or thought things happen isn't quite reality. And so thankful for that. You've got a lot on your plate between the transitions and everything going on at home and the 4 kids. And so I'm super thankful for that. Super thankful for your faithfulness. And we'll be praying that the Lord continues to strengthen you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. How about for you, Jonathan?
Yeah, like Casey said, I think it was really helpful early on, I think, for us to recognize that we're wired differently, that we think differently, that our capabilities are a little different in terms of how we feel about the language learning process and also what our goals are. And I think being okay with that and being okay with not having to do things at the same pace was really healthy for our marriage and our relationship and not feeling like we were competing against one another. We have different strengths in different areas. And so one of my biggest focuses and goals was being able to communicate in Arabic in the medical setting and being able to have patient interactions fully in Arabic by 6 months. So which is something that the Lord provided for, and I was able to do and continue to do. So, I was in clinic today, and a lot of my days working, I'm speaking just Arabic, and so it really helped to solidify some of what I'm learning in the class, and I'll go back and forth. And so, I've been very grateful that I get to do that, and I get to use it in those ways. And a lot of Casey's use of Arabic has been relationships, visiting people in their homes and communicating with neighbors. And don't get her wrong. I mean, she can go for hours just in Arabic having conversations. So it's not as though she hasn't progressed. We're just in different places and have different goals. And so I think both of us have been amazed at God's kindness and our ability to pick up the language and the method that we've used and how He's used that to grow our ability. So
Yeah.
we still make mistakes, and a huge part of this process and language learning style is mistakes are fine, and you just keep going, and you don't have to get it right. And you laugh at yourself every day, and people laugh at you. And I have patients that laugh at me it is just funny, and it's fine. And it's I'm like, okay, so I said that wrong. How would you say it? Teach me something. So
early on, I was trying to say they have all of these routine sayings that they share with one another. And one is, may God bless you. And so I was trying to say that, may God bless you. This was early on. And instead I said, may God infect you. Such a laugh.
That's so great.
I'm sure it just shows so much love that you're willing to completely learn the language fully, not just some catchphrases here and there, just enough to buy something out at the market, but to really relationally dive in. Do you notice people really appreciating that effort? Or, I mean, I'm sure that's a huge inroad to relationship and meeting neighbors and things. What are people's responses? Or just laughing?
No, I think they really love it. And when I'm out and about the country is so diverse. So I'm not always interacting with locals, but when I do have a chance to talk with local ladies who are out, they think it's amazing. And we're learning the actual dialect of this country. So even that, I think they think it's so neat that we speak just like them. And
give you special discounts at the zoo.
Yeah, I got a special discount. She said, I'm going to give you the local discount because you speak like a local.
That's awesome. So you guys have been through a big transition recently. I mean, you've been through a lot of different transitions over the last 18 months, but moved into a new house. And how has that been? What's that transition been like, and how are you guys doing? Besides not having hot water.
Yeah, we're surviving. We moved. We had a year contract at the first place that we were living, and we moved for a lot of different reasons. But one is to be closer to the hospital where I'm working, which makes just that transition time a little bit easier if I need to get to the hospital quickly when I'm on call. And the house that we're in is a little bit more centrally located to the city, and so a little bit more diverse, definitely a little bit more lively. And we've been able to meet a lot more neighbors in this place, so it was a little bit strategic, and we wanted to be in a place where we would be able to interact a little bit more. The place that we were in previously was a lovely neighborhood, which was quiet, and but we sort of were hoping for a little bit more, I don't know, action.
Yeah, in our last neighborhood, that it was big gates and people could just easily drive in their gate and leave without even seeing other neighbors. So I would walk the neighborhood and I never saw our neighbors. And this neighborhood is different. There's people out and about and walking, and even just in the first week, we met a lot of people.
Mhm.
So that's been wonderful. We've really loved that.
Yeah, there's a big storm recently, so we lost our hot water heater. So Scott was making
Yeah.
it. We've been out
It
of
was
hot
it was
water.
the hail, right?
It was hail, yeah, for a few
Uh,
weeks. Typically people rejoice here to get any rain, but now everybody's pretty scared every time they see a rain cloud, that their car is going to get destroyed again.
is
So
hail normal? I like there I
you
that was
know,
never a
I
part of my like the picture in my head.
I don't. From the people we've talked to, people say, "Oh, my father, my grandfather remembers the last big storm like this. It was 50 years ago or 60 years ago." So
Okay.
it's not. So yeah.
Mm,
So God protected us, and our house was generally fine. Our car took a beating. We had one broken windshield, a few broken mirrors,
mm,
but
mm.
Yeah, a
otherwise,
lot of cars were destroyed. The windows were all cracked and the cars were full of water. And a lot of people's homes are just not built. I mean, all the homes are not built for rain
Mhm.
here. So like water was coming through our window cracks. They're just
Mm.
not sealed.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard. There are a lot of people here from different countries living in much simpler homes, and water would just pour in from the ceiling, and yeah, just homes were really destroyed. So I think a lot of people are still trying to recover from even just the rain aspect of the storm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so Jonathan, you mentioned being at the clinic today. How is the medical side of things going? Like how's the work side of things going?
yeah. I went into medicine for different reasons, and those reasons changed while I was on that trajectory. But I really came to love the practice of clinical work and being in the clinic and growing relationships with patients. And I think having more language to be able to do that in a language that people can understand without having to use a translator has been a gift. And I think the science part of it, or the being able to solve problems, and is fine, and I enjoy that part of it, but the relationships I think is the biggest part of why I went into it, and what I loved the most about practicing in the US, and being able to do that now more and more has been great. I've also been surprised at some of the opportunities that I've had with coworkers. Again, the hospital that I'm at employs people from all over the world. There's so many different nationalities that work here, but many people have come, their parents maybe moved from a neighboring country that we could never get access to or move into, but they're here. And, many different unreached people groups are working at the hospital, which is so cool. And I get to sit with them and work with them on a daily basis,
Mm,
nurses and other staff. And so, it's different when you interact with a patient, once every few months versus a coworker who you're seeing multiple times a week and being able to have conversations with on an ongoing basis. And you're entering into their life and they're seeing you respond to difficult situations in your life. And I think that some of those relationships are really, I think, God given. And he draws people into the hospital. He drew us, the way that he did in there. And so I think it's neat to see some of those opportunities with coworkers that was not really part of our initial kind of plan, or people groups that we were trying to reach, or like target people, but
mm,
and really neat. And just seeing some of them responding to believers in the way that believers have been loving the different staff members that are there, and us doing that together, the few believers that are there, I think has been cool. So yeah, God has used my work not just with patients and growing my love for them through the medical work, but also with coworkers as well.
mm, That's really sweet.
Wow.
That's really sweet. So I want to ask about just ways we as a church family and as pastors can be continuing to pray for you. But um, The thought actually first comes to my mind. Casey, I'd like to ask you, to whatever extent you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to know how we can be praying for your kids. I know that the two of you have a lot going on, and there's a lot of transitions, and there's a lot of kind of focus on that, I would imagine, in the ministry. But I imagine that your focus the majority of the time is them, and just is their discipleship and navigating with them. And if there's any ways that we could be praying specifically for them, I'd love to be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you. I think something that I am constantly praying for them and would love your prayers for is just that all of the unique gifts and challenges of this life that we're all living together would serve good purposes in their lives, that lead them to faith in Jesus. Because there's a lot of wonderful gifts about the life that they're getting to live here. And then there are challenges. I feel like there's more blessings at this point, though. They love being here. All of them have really good friends, which I'm thankful for. And believing friends, and even we're starting to get to know neighbors too. So I'm thankful for that. But I just think about, sometimes as I'm praying for them, I think about them, as teenagers or as adults, and how are they going to think about their life here? And just am prompted to pray that God would use all of it, the hard things that we can't avoid, and the good things for their faith, for their trust in Him. So I would love your prayers for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but overall, our kids they're doing great. They're thriving, and they really like living here. I think our oldest really sets the tone for the family, and he's very enthusiastic about life here and friendships, and he really wants to learn Arabic. And we had started out with them in Arabic class and then took a break, and he really asked that he could start up again. So I think his enthusiasm has really given everyone an excitement about being here still. And I almost wonder how much, now that we've been here a year, I feel like the girls are forgetting what life in America is like. So we're going to have to bring them back and introduce them again to life in America.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what a blessing.
I feel like I have a question that might take us a little off course, but I am curious. I've just heard hints of it. What does living out your faith look like there? Are you able to be completely open, or is it just only if somebody seems that they're asking you questions, then can you share? I know you said there's one place that you can legally gather, but just even in sharing your faith, can you be open with people? What does that look like?
Yeah. So the hospital that I'm working at was actually planted as a missions hospital many, many decades ago. And so there is a unique favor that was given and permission to even exist, by the government so many years ago that has, continued through all of these years. And so in one sense, there is, almost an expectation that, a foreigner working at that hospital would be a believer. But what that means, a lot of times people that started working there had never really met a Christian before, had never met a believer, but, knew it was a good hospital and wanted a job there. And so for me, at least in relationships, there is this, it's not uncommon for people to assume that I was a believer, but to be able to have a conversation with somebody, for example, a patient, and to be talking about spiritual things or how their relationship with God is affecting the way that they're dealing with a particular problem, and being able to ask if it's okay if I was to pray for them and pray for them in Jesus' name would be fine. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to do that and to just offer, there actually are Bibles in exam rooms, something that the hospital is given permission to do. And so in some senses, there's much more openness because of the place and because of some of the boldness of the first people that came and established the hospital, and just being able to commit to that. And that's them wanting that to be the identity of that place. In terms of, when we're learning language at the Language Center, there is an element of mutual respect and asking questions about each other's culture that naturally leads to questions of faith and what we believe. And their curiosity again, and oftentimes meeting us, or who are the first believers that they've ever met. So the country has certain exposure to Westerners, a lot of Westerners in different capacities, but many people have never met believers. And even if they've interacted with a lot of Westerners or tourists or other foreigners, a lot of times they'll say, I had one idea about what Christians were like, and it was like it was
like TV. Like all Christians are modest and rude. I don't know, whatever they see on TV, they think that's what a Christian is. And so yeah.
they would equate Western with Christian. Is that so?
Yes.
Like whatever Western media they see.
Everybody on a Hollywood movie is a Christian.
Wow.
And it's, not everybody, I think, but I would say for the most part, most of our interactions, and people are really honest and say, like, I hated Christians. I thought that they were like terrible and ruining the world, and look what they're doing in Hollywood, and sort of step back and say, like, why did you assume that person was a Christian, and what does it mean, to be a follower of Jesus? And, a follower of Jesus listens to Jesus and obeys him. What does Jesus say? And we start talking about, some of the way that Jesus even went beyond, what was written in the law of Moses to talk about, what is adultery and what is murder. And some of those things, I think are opportunities and ways for us to demonstrate actually, being a follower of Jesus doesn't look like that, and we are not like perfect examples, right? But if we're following him and they get to see that, a lot of people have made comments, especially our language teachers that get to see us in depth and on a regular basis, have commented about how they did not know what a believer in Jesus looked like until they met us. So
wow, truly getting to be ambassadors. I can't imagine somebody's first interaction of their encounter with Jesus, like through you,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's really sweet. Do you Casey, do you find that similar or more difficult, even just in the neighborhood or with kind of maybe less in-depth relationships?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in the neighborhood, for example, I was at a Pakistani woman's house yesterday, was it? Yesterday. And just sitting with her in her home and sharing food with her. And I was thinking about it, like, would this be a time that I could share with her or not? And I think each time it just is like a reliance on the Holy Spirit. And like having just met her for the first time, I didn't like steer the conversation in that direction. But I do feel like there is an openness. Like I would, depending on the situation, feel like I could share with our neighbors. I think it's more sensitive with locals. I think they're more, there's just more passion that people take with locals and with people who are from different countries. There's, I think, more openness.
Totally.
Would you say that?
I would say that's true, but I think in your relationships with language teachers are probably deeper than mine. So most of the language teachers are female. And so I have some ability to be able to have, relationship, but there is still, I think, like a cultural barrier just because of my gender that Casey doesn't have. So.
Yeah, I've definitely, I feel like the ladies in the Language Center are just really open and they're all local. So, and I've gotten to share, I think, with almost everyone that I've studied with to varying degrees. And I think because we've built relationship over a long period of time and have talked about every aspect of life together, then it's just really natural. And they're, especially I think when they ask questions, that's like a big open door. What is the meaning of life? Or how do you persevere when things are difficult? Or how do you always have hope? Like, these are some of the questions they'll ask.
Yeah.
And when they ask things like that, I think it's a real invitation to share honestly.
Wow, I feel like we struggle sometimes even answering those questions in our own heart language, let
Yeah.
alone a language class that you're learning.
Mm.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it was just helpful to kind of see what the context is like there.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Well, what are some other ways we can be praying for the two of you, whether personally or ministry-wise? How can we be supporting you in that way?
Yeah. So we've sort of this last month have been processing a little bit. We just passed the 1 year mark in our language study in the beginning of February. And so I've been really trying to kind of think through this next season and kind of ask one another and ask the Lord what this next year is going to look like focus wise. And I think we kind of came to a place where we recognize we really, even though we've progressed so much in language, there's so much we want to be able to communicate that still is very difficult in terms of deeper conversations and spiritual things and thinking through, being able to quote scripture. And so we have a long way to go, and committed to this next year, really trying to double down on language learning and really focus on some of the spiritual language in Arabic. And you can pray, for Casey mentioned endurance, but opportunities to really be able to commit some of those extra spaces of time. I think we're much busier now than we were when we moved here, and I'm working a little bit more and we have more relationships. And so it's a little bit more tempting to kind of pull back on the language. And so just ask that God would give us endurance to do that. Another particular request is that we're coming up into the month of Ramadan, which we can talk about more, but our opportunities to visit people goes up significantly during that month. We're invited much more often, and now we have much more language capacity than we did. And so just ask that God would be giving us energy. Those are late nights. And so we already hinted we're early to bed people generally. That doesn't always happen. This is not an early to bed culture. Unless early to bed is like 4 a.m.
Wow.
Depending on so yeah, just ask that God would give us energy during this season, and even extra language ability as we're going to be visiting people more in their homes this next month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you guys want to talk a little bit more about that, about how we can maybe commit to over the next month? So Ramadan starts March 10th. Is that correct? And how we can be praying for and supporting you guys during, and what that might look like.
Yeah. I think Ramadan is a time when people here are especially thinking about spiritual things. And I think it's a time we've heard that people experience dreams about Jesus or visions, and are just really asking questions. Part of the season of fasting is to earn favor with God, to do more good works than bad, and come out on the other end with God's favor. So I think it's just a unique opportunity. People are thinking about spiritual things and are hungry and thirsty. So you can just be praying that God would reveal himself to people. I think a lot of when we've heard people's stories here of coming to faith, a lot of it first starts with God revealing himself to someone in a special way. And then they think, oh, I wonder about that. Or I wonder, who is this person I dreamed about? And then start their journey of seeking out more. And so, yeah, I feel like it's a great time to be praying that the Holy Spirit would be at work in people's lives. And what else? Do you have any thoughts?
So I think the more we've been here and the more we've interacted with people, there's a real spiritual darkness to life here. And I think, I mean, any attempt, right, to earn God's favor is not in the kingdom of light, right, and is seeking to do something either on our own power, right, or through deception. And it's hard. It's hard to be able to even introduce ideas that are different. And so even though people are maybe a little bit more focused on spiritual things, they're also, I think there's an opportunity for people to become even more deeply invested in the system that they're in. And so just pray for sensitivity, for humility for us as we go forward into this season. Pray that God would give people a hunger and a thirst for righteousness. He would allow people to kind of come out on the other side unsatisfied by some of the attempts to gain more assurance or clarity. A lot of times people are going in really wanting to come out on the other side of this month with greater confidence because of the things that they've accomplished or done this month. And so I think only unless God, breaks into that, there's not anything we can say, there's not anything that we can do to be able to open people's eyes. All of us were dead in our transgressions and sins in which we once walked. And so there's nobody that can make themselves alive. There's nobody that can come in and do that except for Christ. And so just pray that God would do something miraculous. There's, again, the longer we've been here, the more I think I recognize we're so limited in what we can. And we literally can do nothing. We can share with somebody, we can share the gospel, you can do it in English, you can do it in Arabic, you can quote scripture. And it is not a human, it's not something we're capable to do. This is a spiritual battle. So, ask that we would be more aware of that as we're, deeply investing in people this month, that we would be more dependent on the Spirit, growing in our helplessness and in prayer, recognizing that there's nothing that we can do without God's power. So it's another practical way you can pray just for us spiritually.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. Even as you're sharing, both Jonathan and Casey, it feels like such a privilege to me for us to get to partner with you in that, to get to pray for your conversations, to get to pray for specifically. I think sometimes it's hard to pray, for people in other parts of the world with, all sorts of different things going on. But when we, as an extension of our church family, there on the ground, knowing that we can support you and support those conversations, and even thinking about the individuals that you're talking with, that you're breaking the fast with, that you're having, that you're learning language with, is a huge privilege for us. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think I'm so grateful for just how God's working through you guys, but just how you were able to share and capture just all the unique ways that you were surprised by ministry, that it's kind of everywhere. I feel like what I've heard in your story is that you found it everywhere and not just at the medical center, or not just by proxy of moving to this different country. It's like all these little ways that that God is working with each person he's put in your path. It's just so beautiful. And you just realize he has a plan, and he's orchestrating something. And just like you said, you have to just be faithful and do what you can do, and then pray the Holy Spirit does the rest. And yeah, it's just, thank you so much.
Okay. So that actually connects for me, Steph, to one last question I want to ask the two of you. So you mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation, Jonathan, that it was during your time, even at UCLA, that the Lord was growing both of your hearts for the nations, hearts for just life on mission, and the different ways that was going to look, and the journey it's taken since then. Right now, this is especially with more and more new people to our church family, this is an emphasis and kind of something we're trying to refocus on and focus on again, and take a deeper look at again, both in some of the things we're talking about and doing on Sundays, talking about living on mission, and what that looks like here and globally. We also have a cohort, a mission of God, living on mission cohort that right now, like every 4 weeks, 60 people from the church are meeting to just look intently at the mission of God and how we can participate, not just locally, but globally, and stirring that heart. I mean, we're praying that the Lord is stirring hearts now for what he may be doing in 5, in 10 years about, continuing this work, and that others would follow in your footsteps as well, in doing that work in all sorts of different places across the world. And so I'm curious at this point. I know you're only 18 months into living there, and I know a lot of things are new, but at the same time, you've traveled quite a journey since the two of you were at UCLA, right? Since you were in West LA. There've been a lot of turns and twists and a lot of things the Lord's done in your hearts since then. What's a way you would just encourage those that are a part of our church family now as they're wrestling through the reality of God's mission in the world and the ways in which each of us get to be a part of it? I know it's a big question kind of for the end, but I'm super curious as to what your thoughts are.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that, especially in LA, like the nations are there, like around you currently. And I think something that really surprised me, and I think about all the time, is that I had one of my language teachers. She studied in Ohio for 4 or 5 years, and she was never invited into an American's home. She never talked with a believer and never went to the home of an American. All of her friends were just people from the Middle East that she connected with at university. And I just thought that is so sad. And it made me want to just tell everyone, find your local university and reach out to those girls. And I mean, men and women. Yeah. I think, it's such a time when they are hungry to have community and get to know people, and would just love to be invited into someone's home. So I don't know what that could look like practically, but if you're thinking, if there are people in the church who are thinking, wow, I'm interested in this, I feel like it's a great place to start, just to like look around your own neighborhood or your own local university. I know in Indiana, we had a family friendship program with Notre Dame with the international students, and we just got to sign up to be the like local family for an international student. And it was like so simple, like just have them over every now and then. But I feel like that would be a great step if people are interested in being a part of what God is doing among the nations.
I appreciate that.
And it may surprise people. But when somebody, comes from, a lot of people in this part of the world that have the opportunities want to go and study in the West. They'll go and study in the West, and the plan is not to stay in the West. The plan is to come back, to get an education. And many of the believers, the local believers that are in this area, many of them became believers during times of study, and came back. Some of whom even did, theological training after they became believers in the West, and were able to come back as somebody that knows the local culture and the language, and is able to take a position of even leadership among local believers, which is incredible. So that didn't happen here; that happened in the West, and I think God uses those times, that openness that people have. And it does take some intentionality, right, on the part of those that are living in LA to be able to reach out, to cross those cultural boundaries, to be able to ask questions and build friendships with people that are not like you. And I think you don't know what God's going to do through that, but He's building His kingdom, and He's doing it. It's amazing. Like we're working hard. There's people here that are working hard to reach people that don't have access to the gospel. But a lot of those people, are going for short periods of time, for years at a time, and they're going into the places in which the gospel is so prevalent. And so I think, we sometimes miss those opportunities if we're not looking for them.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. That's super encouraging. I think a great practical encouragement for us. So, well, thank you both for the time. Thanks for staying up late with us. Thanks for sacrificing both the time, and thanks for, like I said, the privilege of the partnership. It really is such a blessing.
Encouragement, and just so grateful for you guys, and good to see you.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening. If you would like more information about the Ditties or how to get connected to their mailing list, I'm going to have them reach out to you, Steph, instead of giving your email address via podcast right now. Jonathan and Casey. So connect with Steph. Steph's happy to connect to you with Jonathan and Casey. And thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. We love you, and we'll see you on Sunday.